open here. So remember, you want Photoshop and not Lightroom. You want Photoshop. I am going to download my pictures into my downloads drive here. So I have everything all set, or I can take them right off the SD card if I want to. And in this folder, I have my falling here, right? My to be floating. I have my background picture like this that is empty. Remember to take that stool out. Take everything out just so the background is empty. And then I have my reaction shot coming up in just a second. There we go. So that's my reaction shot as well. All right, so I can close these. I can either click open here on this page, or I can go to File up top and say open up here. I'm going to navigate to my downloads folder. I'm going to find my 3 pictures. Here's 1, 2, 3. I'm going to hold down the Shift key on my keyboard so I can click the top one here as well. So that lets me select multiple files. I say open, and it'll take just a minute to open. There we go. 1, 2, 3. So I can see here it opens them in tabs at the top, just as if this was like my browser on the internet. So I can switch between different pictures. I'm going to set up my workspace over here. So if I go to Window, I can see Properties. I'm going to uncheck Properties so that window disappears. I'm going to go to my window here, and I'm going to make sure that Layers has a check mark next to it. And if it does, I should see my Layers menu right over here. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to locate my background, which is this particular picture right here. And I want to move this picture and this picture onto my background. So I note the number here, 9962. I go to my first picture. I right-click in the gray area, and I say Duplicate Layer. I locate 9962 here. That's the important one, is I want to change the destination, or else it's just going to copy on top of itself. And then I'm going to call this one Float, just like that. And I say OK. And then I can close this window. There we go. Then I find this one here, which is my reaction shot. I right-click here. I say Duplicate Layer. I'm going to call this one React. Again, I'm going to target 9962. That's the one that I want. I'm going to say OK. Then I can close this guy up here. And now on this 9962, I have 1, 2, 3 layers right in here. Perfect. All right, now before I get started, I want to make sure that they're all lined up, because I know everybody did a great job of keeping their camera still, but there might be a little bit of wiggle room in there. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key again. I'm going to click on the bottom layer, and now I've selected all 3 layers here. So once all 3 layers are highlighted in gray, I go to Edit. I say Auto Align Layers, like so. I see them all lined up here, and I say OK. And perfect. So now they should be, mine didn't wiggle too much, but yours may wiggle a little bit more. But now I can see that that background doesn't move at all when I click those eyeballs. All right, so now let's get to the erasing part. So I'm going to use the eyeballs here. I'm going to hide the top layer, and I'm just going to start to work on Float. Now I need to click on Float so that it's the only one that's gray. I'm going to come down here to this bottom of my Layers menu, and I'm going to add that Layer Mask. I'm going to come over here to this side, my tools. I'm going to select my brush tool. I'm going to use the black and white mini-me down here, and I'm going to flip-flop these to black. This is my size of my brush. This is the hardness. Remember, the hardness is a very soft, fuzzy brush, and then a very hard, sharp edge brush. So you're going to have to move that around. I'm going to use, I don't know, like a 25-inch brush, or 25% hardness brush to start. And then I like to use the keys. So remember, under the plus key on your keyboard, there's 2 brackets. And if I go left and right on my brackets here, I can make it bigger and smaller. Then, making sure that your picture is not activated, but your layer mask is activated. It has to have that white rectangle around it. I'm going to paint out my background. Look at that. Perfect. Now, as I get closer, I might want to zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to say Command plus a couple times. I'm going to hold down my space bar so it turns into a little hand, and I'm going to pull it up and over just like that. And if I'm too close, I can say Command minus, and I can zoom out just a little bit. Again, I'm going to use my brackets there. I'm going to get a little smaller, and I'm going to paint this out. Now, as a pro tip, the bigger the brush you can use, the better. So always use the biggest brush possible. When you are using a tiny little brush, you're going to see little track marks and little lines and stuff from where you're erasing. But when you use a bigger brush, it helps to blend it a little bit better. All right, so there we go. So that's blended here. Remember, if I accidentally blend a little too much in here and I'm losing a little bit of my rear end there, I can flip-flop to white. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Again, spacebar, hold it in, turns it into a hand. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller here because I want that to be a little harder edge, and I'm just going to darken the edge of my pants here so that they show up a little bit better. All right, and I zoom out. And that, my friends, is pretty much it, right? So I've made it empty here. So anywhere I'm basically poking a hole in here. So here's my layer mask here. This is what I just drew, right? Let's make sure this is all filled in. To show that layer mask, I'm hitting the backslash key right next to the brackets, and I can toggle that layer mask back and forth, right? So that's my layer mask right there. So that's what I've cut a hole in, and it disappeared. So now when I look at this layer, I'm going to need to cut a hole on the right-hand side. So I'm going to go to the top layer. I'm going to hit my layer mask again, making sure that the layer mask is selected. I'm going to use a really big brush here because I just need to paint out this side here. Oh, what did I do wrong? Look down here to the left. I'm painting with white. I got to flip-flop to black. There we go. Haste makes waste. There we go. And I'm just going to cut a hole right inside this here. And as I get closer to the feet, my brush, I'm going to make it smaller and smaller. Oops. And I'm just going to paint those feet in just like this. All right, and you go back and forth with black and white and make sure you get everything. You don't want that knee to be there. You got to really look carefully. And again, a good way to check it out is to toggle that backslash key just like that. And I can see here. Okay, I just want to make sure I have all of this highlighted in red here. So that shows me everything that is erased. So that mirrors this black up here in the corner. So again, that's the backslash that sort of toggles that on and off just like so. All right, perfect. So the last thing I can do just compositionally is I can go to my cropping tool, which is the fifth tool down here. I'm going to select 5x7 for this one because, again, I don't want to just use a willy-nilly one because if I do that, my frame is not going to fit. It's going to be like 6.78 by 11.2, and you're never going to find a frame like that. So 5x7, 4x5, whatever you got in there. See if I can bring this down just a little bit. There we go. I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to look at my rule of thirds. So I'm going to bring that line down here by my eyes. I want that to match up here. The bottom looked pretty good. I don't want to lose my foot there, so I'm going to hit the check mark. And there, oh, I see I have that little bit at the bottom here. I'm going to have to bring that up just a little bit. I'm going to lose a little bit of my foot. Or I can bring this down a little bit. And then I hit the return key again. There we go. So I've cropped that out. It looks perfect. Now, the last thing I'm going to want is I'm just missing my shadow underneath, right? Because remember, that shadow is the thing that connects us to our environment. And when I erase that stool, I erase the shadow that I was creating under there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my layers menu. I'm going to make sure I'm on the top layer. It's selected gray here, and I'm going to hit plus. All right. So then here, I am going to find my black paintbrush. Sorry, taking me a second there. I'm going to paint what I think looks like a little bit of a shadow here. I'll put it on the garbage can here, and just sort of like that. There we go. And again, you'll have to figure out where your light source is and where the shadow goes and all that sort of good stuff. That's a little bit more of an advanced discussion. But we're just going to put what we think is kind of a shadow down there. Then here on this layer, I'm making sure that layer is selected. And make sure it's at the top. Remember, these layers are movable. I did not mention your background layer should be on the bottom here. And then you should put your other layers subsequently on the top. All right, so I have my layer on the top here, which is my shadow. I'm going to use the opacity. I'm going to turn the opacity down to like, I don't know, 20%, something like that, so that it blends in a little bit better. And look at the other shadows in the scene, like here underneath this cart, so that I can see that it looks like it blends a little bit. And then the last thing I can do is if my light is pretty soft or far away from my subject, I can go up here to filter. I can say blur. I can say Gaussian blur. And I can pull this over a little bit to the right here, and I can see the preview. This is without the preview. That's with the preview. It softens it. I can bring it over a little bit more. If I bring it too much, it sort of fades to nothing here. But I'm just going to give it a little bit of an edge on there. I don't like that 20. I'm going to say OK. And now I have my shadow underneath. And you are good to go. All right? That's basically it. So now, to save it, right, we're going to say File. We're going to say Save. So that saves it. I can save it into my Cloud Documents here. So I just click that button. I'm going to give it a title. Float test. And I say OK. So there it goes. And I can see down in the left-hand corner, it's blue here. It was saving. Then I'm going to say File, Save As. I'm going to save it on my computer. I'm going to find my downloads folder here, which is fine. And I'm going to say Save. I'm going to say OK. And then I'm going to exit out of Photoshop for a second. And then if I go to Lightroom, this is if you want to load it into Lightroom. Where's my Lightroom? There we go. You can bring it right out of your downloads folder into your Lightroom. There is probably a way to bring it from your Creative Cloud folder into Lightroom. I just have not figured that out yet. Some of this conversation back and forth is sort of new. But you can definitely, there's ways to figure that out. You guys are a smart audience. So that is basically the gist of it. So good luck to you.